Hey guys, this is Austin. This is the Apple HomePod, and at $350, I have exactly one question. Why does it exist? Now no, I'm not trying to say that this is some useless product or that it is not meant for anyone. When you consider that the world is filled with Amazon Echoes and Google Homes that cost $40 or $50, a $350 speaker that has Siri inside, that's a little bit of a hard sell for most people. So in classic Apple fashion, the unboxing is super simple, no giant stabbing knife needed. So this has come out today, and it's a little bit late. I think this was originally supposed to come out late last year. But the idea here is that this is a very high-end, very good sounding speaker that just happens to have Siri. You know what I'll say, this looks really nice. So it has this fabric mesh all the way around, it's nice and soft. It's definitely a little bit of a different look, although the power cable's built in. Okay. We also have designed by Apple in California with what I assume is, yes, a single Apple sticker. Not a lot of accessories with your $350 smart speaker, but what really matters is, how does it actually sound? All right, so $350, a lot of money. But I will say there actually are some nice things about the hardware. So like I was saying, this fabric finish feels pretty nice, and it even comes across to the power cable. There's a lot of attention to detail here. What you won't find with the HomePod is anything besides this power cable. So there's no USB, there's no Bluetooth, there's not even going to be any kind of aux input, which, now that you think about it, Apple's killed the headphone jack on everything else. Makes sense to kill it on the speakers. What you will see, however, is a little tiny grid of LEDs that are below this sort of frosted panel on the top. So it's kind of cool, but there's not a proper screen. It's more for kind of giving you notifications and sort of a little bit of a colorful thing when Siri's listening. Like AirPods, the setup is going to be pretty straightforward. So if you have an iPhone, and yes, you're probably going to want to have a lot of Apple products for the HomePod to make sense, you're going to see a little setup icon right here. Do that, and it should sync it with the Apple ID. One thing you probably will want with the HomePod is Apple Music. So it does support AirPlay, so things like Spotify and YouTube will work. However, if you actually want it to work properly just using your voice, you're going to want to use Apple Music. They're very specific. The HomePod is for people who have everything Apple. Before we get started, I'm going to give everyone a warning. The words, "Hey Siri" and "Hey Google" are about to be spoken many, many times. You've been warned.
Sorry, I can't search the web here.
The main reason to pick up the HomePod though is for music, and at least on paper, this sounds pretty good. So you're getting 7 microphones that are paired up with an Apple A8 chip, which not only are going to be listening for you to call Siri, but also it's going to be able to tune the music for your specific room. Now to do that, it uses a total of 8 speakers inside this guy. So there's 7 small tweeters that are spread out all the way around to be able to give you a full 360 sound, but there's also going to be a single 4-inch subwoofer. So at this point, if you have Apple Music, you can just tell it to play a song. However, if you're like me and use Spotify, you're gonna have to AirPlay it from your phone. So of course, you're gonna be listening to this on YouTube, so everything is going to be compressed, but we do have a microphone here to hopefully give you a decent idea of what this sounds like in person. Let's give it a try. I will say one thing. This does a really good job of giving you that full 360 sound. No matter really where this is placed, you're pretty much gonna hear the same thing around. Something else is immediately apparent. This guy, even though it's obviously a very small speaker, has a lot of bass. It's also really apparent that they're doing a good job of making sure that it doesn't bottom out. So even though there is a lot of bass, it's not really overpowering the rest of the music. And even when you crank it up to higher volumes, it stays surprisingly well put together. I mean, I guess for a $350 speaker, you hope it sounds pretty good, but I'm pretty impressed. Hey Siri, pause. One thing I will say is that the microphones do a really good job even when you're cranking it to be able to actually hear you pretty well. However, I think the best way of actually being able to properly test how well this sounds is to put it up against its biggest competitor. When I say biggest, I mean biggest, the Google Home Max. So if you guys are not familiar, the Google Home Max is very much the sort of Google competitor to the HomePod. Now, yes, it is much larger, but there's a lot of things that are going to be very similar. So this has Google Assistant, whereas this has Siri. They both have multiple speakers inside that are going to be working together. And they both also do have a version of the sort of room sensing technology that will tune the sound based on what kind of environment that you're in. There are some advantages to the Google Home though, including the fact that not only does it have a USB port, but it also supports Bluetooth as well as aux-in. So you know, if you're not living in 2018 yet, this has got you covered. However, the price difference is kind of surprising. Whereas the HomePod runs a pretty expensive $350, Google will charge you $400 for the Google Home Max. Hey Google, play Hotel California.
Okay, Hotel California by Eagles.
So at first glance, they're actually surprisingly different. So the Google Home Max is louder, kind of expected with it being a much larger speaker. However, it completely lacks that 360 directionality of the HomePod. So from the side, it's kind of okay, but from the front, it is very, very loud. Now the HomePod, even though it's a little less bassy, I think does a much better job of making sure that you really hear all the different instruments. There's a lot of separation between the two. But let me listen to a few other songs and kind of fully actually test to see what these guys sound like. Although, to be fair, Hotel California is the only song anyone actually needs to listen to, but I guess I can play like 2 or 3 other songs if you really want me to, for some weird reason. Hey Google, play Like Whoa from Logic.
Like Whoa by Logic, sure. Playing on Spotify.
Okay, so after listening to these both for a little while, my impressions are pretty firm. This sounds good. It's decent in a vacuum, but there's a lot of bass and it is very directional. The HomePod, there's just so much more separation. You hear all the different instruments, you hear the different vocals, like everything is very sort of layered. Whereas this, it feels a little bit flat in comparison. It's a good speaker, but there's no doubt the HomePod sounds phenomenal. However, that's just one piece of the puzzle. So sure, if you're just going to buy one of these for pure audio quality, you can stop watching now. But I think what a lot of people are interested in is how the actual assistants on these guys work. Hey Google, when do the Olympics start?
Competitions of the Pyeongchang 2018 Olympic Winter Games began on Wednesday, February 7, 2018, and ends on Sunday, February 25, 2018 PST.
Hey Siri, when do the Olympics start?
The 2018 Winter Olympics will be held February 9th to the 25th in Pyeongchang, South Korea.
Hey Google, how many cups in 42 gallons?
42 U.S. liquid gallons equals 672 U.S. customary cups.
Hey Siri, how many cups are in 42 gallons?
42 gallons is 672 cups.
Something I'm noticing is that Siri is a little bit more curt. It gives you like much shorter answers where Google wants to give you all the detail. Hey Google, what's the news?
Here's the latest news. From NPR News Now at 3 p.m. today.
Live from NPR News.
Hey Siri, what's the news?
Here's the latest news from NPR.
Hey Google, play the latest episode of Reply All.
Okay, playing the latest episode of Reply All, number 42 Blind Spot rebroadcast.
This episode of Reply All.
Hey Siri, play the latest episode of Reply All.
Sorry, I couldn't find Reply All in your music. If you have an Apple Music subscription,
Podcast.
check.
Hey Google, what do you think about Siri?
Full respect. Being an assistant is hard work.
Hey Siri, what do you think about Google Assistant?
I think the acquisition of information and intelligence by human beings through virtual assistants is a very good thing.
Google's like, Siri's great. I think the acquisition of information by human-like beings is excellent. All right, so what have we learned? Well, I think that they're actually fairly evenly matched as far as the assistant side. So for the basic stuff, they're gonna be very similar for things like turning on and off your lights or kind of figuring out traffic or the basic kind of things. And I think as you get to be a little bit more advanced, I would give the slight edge to Google Assistant. But I think a lot of people have sort of been complaining about Siri, and at least based on this, they're not that far off. Now, as far as the music side goes, it's definitely a HomePod win. But for me, if you're not gonna be really serious about music, I think it's hard to recommend either of these. So in my house, I really like using the Google Home Minis as well as the standard Google Homes. They're much less expensive. And unless you're really serious about the music, they sound totally fine, especially if you're really focused on the assistant side. So, should the Apple HomePod exist in 2018? Yeah, it's actually not bad. So to be fair, you need to be totally into the Apple ecosystem. So I'm talking Apple Music, iPhones, Macs, the whole thing. But if you are, this is a really, really good sounding speaker. So I'm curious, what do you guys actually think about HomePod? Let me know in the comments below and I will catch you in the next one.